Hi, I'm Steven Shomler. You're watching Spark to Bonfire on Shomler TV. On this episode, I'm going to teach you my 11-word branding and marketing seminar. That's right, branding and marketing, it's 11 words. You're going out a pen and paper and write these 11 words down because they're very helpful. If you're launching a startup, if you're building a brand, if you're wanting to grow your company, if you're bootstrapping your way to a better life, or if you're battling for a dream that needs a fan base, you're going to need this seminar. Trust me. Not only will I teach you the 11 words, I'm also going to teach you 3 brand gems. I'm going to teach you the 3 elements of a compelling story. I'm going to tell you about the time Doctor Who came to my house, and I'm going to tell you the story of the kindergartner and the piano bench. Okay, you ready? Let's get started. The 11 words are actually 5 words and 6 words. So here's the 5 words. Get a pen, write them down. Your brand is your story. Your brand is your story. And 6 words? Marketing is tastefully telling your story. Marketing is tastefully telling your story. Storytellers win. Storytelling works. You tell your story, you'll build your fan base. Good things will happen when you tell your story. Most people struggle because either they don't know their story, your brand is your story, and if you don't know your story, you're stuck, or you simply don't tell it. Most people's problem is not that they tell their story in a distasteful way, because you have to tell your story tastefully, but it's that they don't actually tell it. So here's 3 things that might be true about you, and I'm going to help you with all 3. Number 1, you don't know your story, and that's probably why you don't tell it. And if that's true for you, the 3 brand gems are going to help you tremendously. Or maybe number 2, you can't effectively tell your story. The 3 elements of a compelling story that I'm about to teach you, that will help you with that. Or maybe you're not really sure where to tell your story. The Doctor Who story I'm going to give you, that will help you with that. Okay, you ready? 3 brand gems. Write these down. These are important. These will help you. First one, you can't create your brand. What do I mean by that? I mean, you can't just make stuff up out of the air that sounds good. I used to have a colleague years ago who he would interview people, and he'd get their story down to help tell it. Then he'd have a copywriter to polish the story, which I think is a wise, great thing to do. But then he would throw in these little phrases that he just made them up because they sounded good. And they didn't really apply to the situation. You can't do that. You can't make up stuff that sounds good just because it sounds good. You can't just create your brand out of thin air because it will be inauthentic and people will see through it. So here's what you do instead. Discern your brand. Instead of creating it, discern it. It's already in here. Just discern it. And the best way to discern your brand is to tell your story. Listen to yourself as you're telling your story and write it down. Now, that can be very hard to do, which is why it's very helpful sometimes to hire a consultant, someone like me who excels at brand storytelling. There's lots of people that do it well. I do it well. Give me a call. I've helped people all over the country with it, and we'll get your brand story figured out. We'll have an authentic story that comes from here. Not one we created out of thin air, but one that we discerned by listening to you. And the 3rd brand gem I have is that you need to listen with your heart. When your story is being told, you have to listen with your heart for those things that tug at the heartstrings, because a good story has heart. Can't create your brand. You discern your brand and listen with your heart. Okay, what are the 3 elements of a compelling story? If you're going to tell a compelling story, you need these 3 elements. The first one is a secret origin. When I was a kid growing up, I loved DC Comics, and they had a comic book series called Secret Origins, and you could find out how Barry Allen became the Flash, how Jay Garrick became the Flash, how Wally West back in the day became the Kid Flash. I loved those stories, the backstory. How did it happen? How did people come to be? I've told my secret origin many, many different times. Summer 2011, I stood in a dirt driveway in southeast Portland. I was desperate. I needed a new life, and I want to head off in the direction of the life I imagined. I decided I'd become a writer and a speaker and an author and be self-employed, and I set out after it. I had some opinions about branding and marketing and social media and achievement. I was convinced if I applied those to myself that I would make it happen. In a nutshell, my secret origin, I stood in a dirt driveway and said, I'm going to have a new career. You have a secret origin too. The trick is being able to get it down on paper so you know how to tell it succinctly. Second element of a compelling story is your heartfelt quest. What is your heartfelt quest? I meet with people all the time and I ask them, and maybe they've always wanted to cook for themselves, or someone that's opening a food cart, or maybe they wanted to be self-employed and they've always wanted to be the boss. There is a heartfelt quest in there for you, I guarantee it, and you've got to figure out what it is. For me, there's a couple different ones. One, for many, many years, I wanted to be an author. I wanted to go into a bookstore and be able to buy a book with my name on the spine that I'd written. Setting out to pursue that dream, that was a heartfelt quest. I was desperate for a new life. I just couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I needed something different. That was part of a heartfelt quest. And I love making a difference in the lives of people, and that's part of my heartfelt quest. Compelling stories. Number 1, have secret origin. Number 2, have a heartfelt quest. And number 3, you tell people your ongoing journey. Okay, what was the last movie you saw in a theater that you really enjoyed? Just recently, my son Zach took me to see Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And when the movie ended, I was sad. I'm like, oh, I don't want this to end. I want another adventure. I want more. I want the ongoing story. I remember the first time I saw Indiana Jones, his movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I wanted more adventures with Indiana Jones. Well, what's next? What's next? And the beauty is that you can share your ongoing journey and let people follow it, because people that are excited, they're fans, they're going to want to know about your ongoing journey. I know some of you right now, I have clients all the time, when I say you need a fan base, they get anxious. So soon I will film It's Okay to Have Fans and What is a Fan, so that will help you with that. But just trust me for now. If you feel awkward having fans, it's okay to have fans, and I will teach you about that. Okay, so let's say that you've got it all nailed down. You've taken time to figure out your brand story. You've written it down. You've hired a consultant, or you've taken care of it yourself. You know what your secret origin is, a couple paragraphs. You've got your heartfelt quest, 1 or 2 paragraphs. And now you're ready to start sharing your ongoing journey. But where are you going to tell your story? Well, that leads us to the time that Doctor Who came to my front door. Doctor Who is a British television series that started in the 1960s, went for quite a long time. In 2005, it had a revival. And a few years ago, my youngest, we were watching Doctor Who. They love Doctor Who. We did it together. And one day I've outgrown Doctor Who, so now I watch Doctor Who by myself. I love it. If you like Doctor Who, great. If you don't, here's what you need to know. Doctor Who travels around in a TARDIS. I know that's a weird word, TARDIS, and he travels through time and space. Doctor Who is a time traveler, and that's how I knew that he had come to my house the other day when I walked outside and looked down and saw something from a different decade. I looked down and I saw an honest-to-goodness phone book. I hadn't seen one in years. Now, some of you have no idea what a phone book is, but it's a book. It depends on what community you lived in. When I was growing up, my mom always had a copy of the Riverside phone book. City Riverside, she had the phone book at our house. We lived outside of Lake Elsinore, but for some reason, she had the Riverside phone book. And this weird book had in the back, in the white pages, a listing of everybody's phone numbers. Believe it or not, your phone number was in a published book that everybody could find. And in the front section, they had pages that were often yellow, and that would list all of the pizza places or all of the coffee shops. And if you wanted people to find you, to know you existed, you had to get yourself in the next edition of the phone book, because people would open the phone book to find out where the coffee shop was or where the pizza place was. And if you weren't in the phone book, nobody knew about you. I tell you this because there used to be a time when, to let people know where you were and that you existed, you use a phone book. Today, what you use to do that, you guys all know it, it's social media. And the best place for you to tell your story is on social media. And I want you to start to view social media as a resource and a tool, as a place where you can tell your story. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Now, some of you are going to have to change how you use social media. I know it. I often have people say, well, I only use Facebook to share private stuff with my family. Stop that. Don't do that. Do not put private stuff on the internet. If you don't want the world to see it, don't put it on the internet. Don't put it on Facebook just for your family to see. That's a bad idea. So what I'm going to suggest to you, it's fine if you want to share things with your family, but you should only put stuff in the internet you want the world to see, and start to use Facebook, for example, and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube as a place to tell your story, let people know what you're doing, because that will help you build a fan base and have success. Trust me, it will. It really, really will. Okay, kindergartner and the piano bench. Let's bring it all together. I host an FM radio show on a Portland Radio Project, 99.1 FM. My show's Tasty, Tuesday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I often have a food cart guest live and in studio at 9 a.m. and a musical guest in studio at 8 a.m. And I often ask the question, where did your food cart journey begin? Or where did your cooking journey begin? Or if it's the musician, I ask the question, where did your musical journey begin? And I've learned that I often have to ask a musician that 5 or 6 times in different ways before we finally get to where their music journey began. One case in particular, a musician I love, she does a great job, phenomenal local musician. Before we turn on the microphones and go live on the air, I'm saying, okay, where did your music journey begin? And she started telling me about the time she was on stage in Eugene and how great it was. And I go, well, I was in college. So your music journey didn't begin sooner? Well, oh no. And she told me about this really cool story, being 8 or 9 years old and being on the beach on the Oregon coast and writing songs. And okay, that's where you really wanted to be a songwriter, but where did your music journey begin? And we talked 4 or 5 times, and finally she said, oh, I got it. I know exactly where my music journey began. I was in kindergarten, and I would come from kindergarten every day, and my older sister was there, and we would sit together on the piano bench, and my mom would put on records, and for a half hour every day, we would sing along loudly to the records. And I remember right then is when I fell in love with music, and I realized how powerful music was, and I wanted to sing songs. I wanted to share that with the world, and other people experience the joy I was having. Bam! I said, that's it. That's where music journey began. That's a beautiful story. It's heartfelt. It's compelling. It's interesting. And best of all, it's 100% true. Remember I said you can't create your brand, you have to discern it? Now, because we know her secret origin, she has a fantastic story, and now she just needs to share it. That is a compelling story right there. Sitting on a piano bench in kindergarten, singing along to records with your older sister and falling with music, that's what I'm talking about. In each and every one of you have a compelling story. I guarantee it. If you don't believe me, hire me. I'll help you figure it out, or just start talking to yourself, telling yourself your story, and you will be able to discern it, or to put in the way, you'll be able to discover it. Storytelling works, and storytellers win. Your brand is your story. Marketing is tastefully telling your story. You have to tell your story. I know you can do it. I believe in you. I'm Steven Shomler. Go live the life you imagine.